This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Audible. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, August 26, 2021, and my guest is the awesome Florence Ion of Gizmodo. Hi, Flo. How are you?
Hi.
Hey.
As I'm like waving.
Good to have you back. I think it's been a couple of years since I've had you on the show now.
Well, it's been at least as long as my child, because the last time I talked to you, I had just found out I was pregnant. So it's been a journey since then.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I'm super excited for you.
Thank you.
So, it's been a relatively quiet week in terms of news. Everybody's kind of scrambling to review their Galaxy products right now. You reviewed the Z Flip3.
I did.
So I'm definitely going to want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay.
I reviewed the OnePlus Buds Pro, which is not nearly as exciting, but hey, you got to start somewhere. So, I'm kind of curious about Buds. Like, what do you have lying around? What's your kind of perspective and exposure, if any?
I just left them upstairs, but I just got my Galaxy Buds 2 yesterday.
Oh, cool.
So they arrived, and I'm switching them for as I go off camera, I'm switching them for the first gen. So I'm going to pop these in the box, send them back to Samsung, and they gave me $50 off. They gave me more money for the smartwatch. I'm going to trade this watch in too. I'm just waiting for I also ordered the Galaxy Watch 4 with LTE. So
cool.
Yeah, I was waiting for this event to do a whole upgrade. I was like, all right, this is the time for me to upgrade the Samsung stuff. And I tend to like to use the Samsung stuff because even I'm using a OnePlus phone, and I'll switch between that and the Pixel just because,
for sure.
Lab work, quote unquote.
The two best ones, I think, actually.
Yeah, but this flip.
Oh,
this flip grew on me.
I know, no. I had the previous gen, the 5G version from last year for a while, and I loved it. And I could see where they were going. There were a few things that kind of kept me from getting really excited, like the tiny little, thumbnail size screen on the old one. But this one, I'm getting one very soon. Samsung doesn't really hook me up with review units. They don't consider podcasters to be that important. So, but that doesn't mean that I can't get my hands on some stuff through our carrier friends, etc. So I'm waiting to still get some of these devices, and I'll keep you posted. But we're going to touch on your review. The reason I brought up Buds is because OnePlus, as you know, make great phones, and they started making great Buds. Last year, they made the regular Buds. They were $79 when they came out. They didn't have wireless charging or ANC, and they were half in ear, meaning they just sat on the outside of your ear. They weren't didn't have silicone tips that went inside your canal.
Oh, that sounds uncomfy.
They sounded really great. They were basically AirPods non-Pro clones. Okay. But they sounded way better, and $79. And now they're regularly on the OnePlus site at $59. And then in the fall, this was August, in November 2020, they came out with the OnePlus Buds Z, which were cheaper even, $49, and have stayed at $49, and have silicone ear tips. And so they're a little more naturally isolating, but they still don't have ANC, still don't have wireless charging, and they don't sound quite as good as the other ones. And so then nothing happened for a while. And then when they announced the Nord 2 in Europe recently, they also announced these OnePlus Buds Pro, which it seems are really meant to be in competition with the Apple, AirPods Pro, really, right? So that's got me excited a little bit, So I decided, hey, let's check that out, right? And I reviewed them. And my takeaway here is not as exciting to me as what I had built up in my head based on the first Buds, which were really great for the money. So I think the deal here is, they compete with the Buds 2 you're about to get from Samsung. They compete with the AirPods Pro, and they're quite a bit more affordable. They're like the Samsung pricing, $150, $149. And they have ANC, and they have wireless charging, which is all really nice to have. But at the same time, I feel like, they don't sound quite as great out of the box as the original Buds sounded. Like, I'm a bit of an audio freak, and I like things to sound very natural and neutral, like studio quality.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're wearing Sony headphones right now. I have those, and I like them, but not out of the box. I find them a little too bass heavy. And so, in the app, you can EQ them and make them exactly perfectly sweet. That's what I like, to sweeten them with some sort of setting if it's available, or have them good out of the box. And the original OnePlus Buds for me were like that. But then these Buds Pro, they just don't sound that good. They're really bass heavy, and they're more for the mainstream consumer. And I think that the AirPods Pro actually sound slightly better. And I don't have a pair of Samsung Buds 2, but I have the Buds Pro, the previous model with ANC, and those sound pretty sweet as well. So you can tune them. There's no EQ in the OnePlus app, or if you use a OnePlus phone, the app is built in. You don't have to install anything.
Of course.
But they don't have the traditional EQ. They have one of those things, that tests your ears, like you listen to test tones and it'll adjust to your hearing. So, but that doesn't really let you EQ them. So I found actually a way to cheat that. I wrote that in my review on Hot Hardware, which I will put in the show notes. But basically, you can pretend to not hear certain sounds and pretend to hear certain sounds, whether or not they're happening. And you can kind of boost the mids and the highs and decrease the bass a bit to get them to sound a little more in step with what you and I would expect as people who have worked in podcasting forever. And I used to studio headphones, right? And in that way, I was able to kind of like rescue them a bit, but I still feel that the problem is the elephant in the room, which is Nothing's Ear One, also with ANC and wireless charging, costs $99, and they sound better out of the box. Now, they're also designed super cool, right? And then you have kind of the outlier here is TCL. Believe it or not, TCL makes earbuds and headphones, and they kick butt. They sound so good, every single one I've used.
I totally forgot.
The cheapest to the highest quality ones. And they make now currently a pair called the Move Audio S600 that costs $99, has ANC, has wireless charging, and in my opinion is better than the OnePlus Buds Pro that are $50 more, is slightly better than the Nothing Ear One, but you don't get that cool industrial design. And of course, better than the AirPods Pro, probably better than the Galaxy Buds 2, simply because I don't think they're going to go much of an improvement over the Buds Pro. They've been slowly getting better, Samsung, from the original Buds to the Plus, to the Live, to the Pro, to the 2. But, that's me being like a bit of an audio aficionado. Like the average person just wants a lot of bass, right? And I'm not that person, so.
I'm not quite sure what I want from audio. All I know is I got these headphones because they're the only things that could like block out all the sound around me here at home.
In the business, for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
That was why I got these. But the Samsung ones is more of just like it was just an ecosystem thing. The fact that I like have the watch and I just like the way they look. But I was just looking at those TCL ones that you mentioned. I went to their website and they have like purple buds. They have a bunch of different versions that I had no idea. So this is like, it's a really interesting product category because I feel like we know all this stuff is available, but a lot of people maybe don't know about all the alternatives that are available.
Yeah, but at the same time, TCL is a known brand. They make great TVs. Yeah. People actually know that brand. So like, it's not like we're telling them to go to Amazon and buy this obscure made in China Shenzhen special. We're actually telling them buy these buds from this known brand. And so, I feel like we could recommend these. And the Nothing Ear Ones, again, new company, but it's Carl Pei's company. Like, we know what to expect there.
Exactly. He has a pedigree.
Fly-by-night deal, right? Mm-hmm. And so my takeaway here is that for the first time in a while, I think you should not buy the OnePlus Buds Pro. I mean, they're good if you buy them and you like bass-heavy earbuds, but you're really spending $50 more for features that you can buy for $99 from TCL and from Nothing and get slightly better sound, in my opinion. So, that's the takeaway. And I was a little bummed because I really think that 2022, $99 will be the average price point of all earbuds that are true wireless with ANC, with wireless charging from all companies. And then the Chinese will come in with like $40 equivalents to that in no-name brand, right? But as far as like, the big brands are concerned, except for maybe Apple and Sony, who are premium, you're going to see this leveling at $90. And I find it so weird that OnePlus is not there with TCL and with Nothing competing in that space right now. Like, it's weird to me. It's like a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't actually just go budget and just like follow along with the Nord timeline.
That's what I mean. But I guess they're trying to, in the same way as the OnePlus 9 Pro cost $1,069 and is only available as 12 gigs. I think they're trying to go up market, but I think in this case, they kind of fell on their face because right around the same time, literally when the TCL 20 Pro 5G, the 5G phone from TCL just came out, that's when those buds came out, and the Nothing came out 2 weeks before the OnePlus Buds. So it's like their kind of timing is a little off.
It is. And after a while, guys, we can't all just blame it on the pandemic. I mean,
no,
you can now to still get out of social situations, but pretty soon
exactly.
That's going to expire too.
So we're talking about Samsung Buds and you're getting them. And trust me, I have been very impressed with every single bud from Samsung. Maybe the Buds were meh, but the Buds Plus really improved things. The Live are not for everyone because they don't go in your ear canal. Again, they sit outside, and that doesn't work so well for ANC. And then you have the Pros. The Pros really I felt were the best yet. And I haven't tried obviously the 2s yet, which you're getting, but I'm hearing that they're very close to the Pro. So they're a little lighter and smaller, which makes them obviously even better. But in terms of sound quality, ANC, all the features, they're very, very close. And the price is pretty much the same. So they're essentially, I think, substituting the Pros with the 2s, and I think you can't go wrong. The one thing about Samsung is they don't provide you full EQ settings, but
I was
as you
just
know,
gonna say that
there's like presets, and I think there's that one called transparent or like clear or something in there that basically just boosts the trebles just a tiny bit, but not in an offensive way that I feel gives you that perfect sweet spot for me. And I found that to be true on every single Buds I've tested. So I think that's what saves the Samsungs for me, is that they're a little muddy sounding out of the box, but as soon as you turn that one setting on, all of a sudden they perk up a bit, and they're like, oh, now I can listen to those forever.
I should try those out. They really are just my watch TV before bed buds at this point. So,
and that's fair. I mean, honestly, look, you wear these Sony headphones. I have them too. And I have the Sony earbuds, the latest one, the WF-1000 XM4s.
Yeah.
I got a review in it. And if you want almost the same level of noise canceling that you're getting with your Sony headphones right now in a pair of earbuds, those actually
That's
do
scary.
that.
That's scary.
Close. It's not perfect. I tried them on an airplane and I was like, wow. Like
that's not, okay, that's the situation I'd want something small because I love these, but I don't take them out of the house. Because I love them too much.
Here's the deal. I've traveled with these headphones you're wearing a lot. Like, as you know, before COVID, I was on a plane every month.
Yeah.
And I was with my Sony on a plane every month, sometimes to Asia, a 10-hour flight, right? Or more than that, 12, 15. And the point is, comfortable, perfect noise canceling, great. But here's the thing. These earbuds from Sony, they're almost as good as ANC, and they sound great. You can tune them again, the same settings you have on your headphones, the EQ, the whole shebang. But battery life is only about 4 or 5 hours. Whereas with these headphones, I can actually go to Asia and come back without charging them. Like, they last 30 hours, your headphones, on a charge with ANC.
That's the upside.
So if you're on an airplane going to New York City, the Buds can be perfectly great because you're like on the flight for 6 hours, maybe 5 hours. And, battery life is 4 hours. You don't wear them for takeoff and landing. You wear them during the flight. You're good to go. And of course, you can recharge them in the case, but you still need to put them in the case for 20 minutes or something, right? Then the ANC is very good from Sony. And of course, the price is very high. But the other thing that I found really difficult as a frequent flyer is that they're uncomfortable after those 4 hours. Like,
that's a bummer.
You start, how comfortable those headphones are. You're wearing them all day for work, right? I could wear them all day. I wear them on flights for like literally 12 hours. But these Buds, after a while, you're like, because they have to make a perfect seal in your ear for the ANC to work properly. And it means, there's stress on your ear canal a little bit. And for an hour, you're fine. 2 hours, you're okay. But after 4, you're like, I need relief,
Oh yeah. And not to mention like all the skin oils and stuff that gets trapped in there. I mean, oh my God, I'm going to have to really clean these buds before I pack them up because I don't want to do that to Samsung.
Kudos for Sony to make ANC almost work as well on earbuds. That's pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So Samsung Z Flip 3. I have played with one. I am waiting for my review unit. I want to thank AT&T in advance for sending me one. Thanks, AT&T. And I want to know, your review's up on Gizmodo. I'll put a link in the show notes, but
thank you.
I want you to tell us. Because you're a Samsung gal.
Well, I was a Samsung gal for a while, and then I kind of I switched over to the Pixel, and then along that way, I found my way into OnePlus.
Haven't we all? All of us Pixel users ended up on OnePlus for a while.
I actually have been enjoying the OnePluses a little more, at least in the last 2 generations of Pixels. So we'll see how this sixth generation or whatever we're up against will be. But look, the Flip, so apparently the people that have pre-ordered this the most, I think, in overseas in South Korea are between the ages of 18 and 34, which is exactly the age range that Samsung wanted to hit with these particular phones. And I can tell, like, this is just a fun ass phone. I mean, it is fun, but sometimes that fun gets in the way of like pure productivity, or even just the ability to like, you know, you have all these fun features like, hey, I can take a selfie right now just from the screen in this little like cute way. Oh, selfie. Okay, that's great. That's fine. But then if I need to follow my kid around, she's running away. She's being really cute with an orange, whatever. I got to do this whole thing. Open this thing up.
The whole gymnastics.
Double press the power button. Get the picture in focus. And there's been a couple of times that I've actually ended up missing the moment. And that's just one little example of the way I've had to change the way I use a phone. And so honestly, since I wrote the review, I've been using this less and less. It's pretty much just been a propped up Pokemon Go grinder for me.
Oh, cool.
So just like pop it up like
bad.
this. Yeah, it still gives me enough runway.
$1,000 Pokemon Go machine.
I mean, gives you enough runway to do a little Pokeball toss on there.
Yeah.
I do like the different, like the other day I made a TikTok with it because I liked that I could orient the camera certain ways with this sort of like built-in kickstand. It's just a little bit easier than using some of the weird like props they have around here. But like you just said, that's $1,000 for that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. That's a lot. It's you really have to marry yourself to the idea of using this phone. It's not just it's something I'll get used to. People who do see it though, they're always like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I imagine once this becomes more commonplace, then maybe we'll have a couple more like productivity software fixes. Like I'm even reading on the Fold reviews that things need to be optimized just a little bit better. So
yeah, and I think that's the Samsung thing, that they are always a little kind of off. Like, that's why you and I use, OnePlus and Pixel phones, because it's just a better experience, right? No matter how you cut it. So I think that's the trick. I feel like for me, I bought the original Flip, the 4G one, and I returned it because I couldn't get a review in it in a timely manner. And of all the phones released last year at the initial pre-COVID Samsung event in San Francisco, it was the one that really tickled my fancy the most. I was like, oh, wow, this thing, it's like a makeup compact. It's so cool. And the pink and the color and stuff. So I bought it. I played with it. I showed to a few people who were like, wow, I thought it was great, but I thought it needed a little bit of adjustment. Returned it because I didn't want to, waste that money.
Yeah.
And then AT&T offered me the 5G version in the fall to review, to look at. And it's exactly the same, just with a, 5G radio and a better chip. And I found that, again, I felt like it's almost there, but not quite. And then I played with Michael Fisher's Z Flip3 in New York last week when I was there for Moto. And I was just like, I think they nailed it. Like in terms of the design and the bigger screen, which was desperately needed in the front. And I like the slab edges. I like the fact it's not as round in the edges. It's more flat, right?
Oh, yeah, I like that too, actually.
It feels better in hand because of it. And
I agree.
Just the design is further refined. And, on the original one that I had, the 4G, there was no screen protector and it felt kind of like glass. So I liked that. Then on the 5G version, they had a pre-installed screen protector which was very rubbery. And your finger would stick to it and it was unpleasant.
I see what you mean.
And of course you could peel it off, but I didn't want to do that on a review unit. That's not mine. And then, Michael's and yours that you have right in your hand right now, I think they've improved, like the screen protector is still built in, but they've improved it so that now it's no longer this gummy, sticky stuff. It's still plasticky, but I think it feels tons better.
It's like the one on the OnePlus, which I have it on the OnePlus 9
Yeah, the
right
pre-installed
now.
ones. Yeah. And so I think that for me, like the cameras were fine and they're continuing to be fine. They're not like the best, but they're pretty damn great because, these 12 megapixel sensors, Samsung keeps using them and iterating on them and the software keeps getting better and they're pretty sure-footed, I think.
Yeah.
And then the screen has gotten better because it's 120 hertz. To me, that's one of the things when you spend that kind of money, you kind of want to have. And then the only thing that I guess is a question mark and you wrote about is a little tough is the battery life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that 120 hertz display, I mean, that's a lot of refresh rate to be powering up. Plus, Samsung, they have really bright displays as it is. So if you have that thing at like max brightness, let's just say, because you want, the full
but
saturated
you can read
experience.
it in direct sunlight though now, right?
Yeah, but who's going outside? I mean, I'm not going outside.
No, you have to take care of your kid.
Well, the whole thing, climate change. Listen, we'll be indoors anyway all the time, so let's just get used to it now.
You're going to be underground soon anyway.
Exactly.
At the rate things are going.
I mean, I'm in a completely dark room right now, so. Ooh. But in all sincerity, I really just don't know about it as a productivity phone, which is why I guess marketing it to younger people kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
Even the features that they bundle with it, it's all about like you can still
that case, right? That case.
Okay, these cases are great, and you are going to need it. It is, but the Samsung actual chassis is so slippery, and actually, this case is kind of hard to take off, so that's good. But the actual chassis is so slippery, that glass chassis, that you want to put the little silicone case on it so that you can actually grip it, so it's not moving around on the table when it's like in the sit-up mode.
I hear that it'll slip off of a table.
Oh, it did.
Like no matter what you do.
Yeah. I felt really like
dangerous.
This was a precious little egg when I first got it because it was such a different form factor than I was used to. And I don't know, just something about it feels so precious, if that makes sense.
It's a kawaii, it's cute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's got some aspects of that. And actually I think that's why people dig it. And here's the thing though. I think that if you look at some iPhones are $1,000, some Galaxies are $1,000, some OnePluses are $1,000. And as you know, you can buy these phones, including the Z Flip3, at a carrier store. And you know, with Samsung, you're going to get deals very soon, and you're going to get carrier deals very soon. And I think I think the price is no longer an issue. I think Americans have shown, for better or for worse, probably not the smartest use of their money, that they will walk into a carrier store and plump down a contract extension or whatever, some sort of payment set up to pay for $1,000 phone over a 2-year period and not even blink an eye. And even some Americans on a budget do this. So for better or for worse, I think this culturally, they've hit the right price point. The fact that it's water resistant is a huge sell, and it's not dust proof, which is obviously a bigger problem, I think, with all these moving parts. But with water, I mean, you spill coffee on it, that happens. That's nice. You don't have to worry about it. You can rinse it on the sink right away and you're good to go. But, I still feel that, as you said, it's still not going to be as solid as a phone, that doesn't fold. And I want to see what that phone looks like in a year in the hands of the average person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's my big question mark right now. Like Michael Fisher, again, he has a Z Fold 2 as his main daily phone for productivity, and he had to get the screen replaced because it was starting to crack in the middle last year. And of course, it was covered by Samsung. But the point was that even though it's designed to be folded multiple times, Michael is so productive on it that he uses it so much that he was running into this fault. And other people have reported the same. And I don't think it's a defect. I'm not blaming Samsung here. I'm just saying that, when you start having non-techies, which is what this phone I think is going to attract a lot, using this phone, what's it going to be like in a year? That's my big question mark, especially since Samsung no longer offers that warranty by default that they were offering on the screen replacement in the old phones. So they dropped that.
Yeah, I completely missed that part. I guess it speaks to just the fact that I never used a flip phone before this. This was my first experience. And so when I got to it, it just felt like, oh my God, this is a new experience. How exciting. But there is still, I did try and kind of bring that out in my review, that you do have to consider the life-changing like move that you're making, getting a folding phone in 2021. Like, this is not 2007. Not everybody's carrying around a flip phone or a candy bar phone. Like, that's not the world we're living in. We've had this one form factor for so long. Right now,
yeah.
Like, do you want to change that up for yourself, especially with everything else going on right now?
Yeah, and I do think that even our candy bar, normal glass slab phones that we use are way more fragile than the flip phones, the plasticky candy bar, Sony Ericsson and Nokia's that we had in the first half of 2000, right? Until the iPhone
Those
came
things
out.
could fall from like stories high and still be usable. Like, not a problem.
I mean, so don't expect to toss this thing around too much.
You shouldn't.
But I still think this is an exciting development in the sense that I
agree.
feel finally I can tell my insert relative here to go buy one and not feel like they're going to have a bad time.
I agree. I totally agree. I'm very curious to see if Gen Z and younger is going to adopt this, if they're going to ask their parents for this form factor. I'm very curious. I don't know of any kids currently who are like Samsung fan kids.
Yeah,
I know a lot of iPhone fan kids.
Yeah,
so.
I think it depends on countries too. I bet you in Korea there's lots of Samsung fan kids.
Yeah, but I mean, it's okay. It's the official phone of the country, so I can understand.
Yeah, right. I know. It's the official phone of BTS. Come on.
It's true. Yes.
Don't forget
BTS on a New York subway car.
I know, right?
so cute.
Crazy. So great. Yeah, no, look, I'm excited about this. I'm going to be reviewing it for Hot Hardware. It should be arriving soon. And so, folks, stay tuned. I'll post my review probably in the next podcast. But, like, honestly, the Fold's got me super excited as well. But if I had to pick one right now, absolutely no contest, it would be the Flip.
Yeah.
And mostly because ultimately, I feel like when I used the Fold 2 last year, I did the same thing, Flo. I bought one and returned it just to kind of get the experience.
Right.
And my geek, like, early adopter was 100% satisfied. It was like, oh my God, this is like
good.
Everything like this, but then I started using it and I'm like, I need to adapt my workflow to this new thing.
100%.
And I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just so set in my ways. Whereas with the Flip, it's just, other than sometimes you have to open it to do stuff, right? Other than that, it's like, once it's open, it's very much like every other smartphone I have available to me right now for review. Like, it's just a slab of glass and, you use it that way. So you don't have to really rethink about, how do I optimize the screen for multitasking, like resizing windows, all that stuff. I have no time for that when I'm using my phone. Like, I'm sorry, I found that with the Z Fold I was using last year, I was using it basically full screen on everything. And it's kind of a waste then, right? Because, Android apps don't do well on full screen.
Open all the way,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I feel like also it's more expensive and I don't need the stylus, which is a new feature on the Fold 3 now. Yeah, I think the Flip would be my choice. And the only thing I wish the Flip had, as you said, is a better, bigger battery, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also that it had a telephoto or a like 48, 50 megapixel sensor that lets you at least zoom in 3 or 4 times.
I agree.
So that like, because that at the 12 megapixel, if you zoom, you're getting 2x at best, right? Like,
oh
you're
my
not
gosh,
getting more than that.
The photos I took of Mona at the park, like, because I sometimes like to zoom in. I do that on the OnePlus 9 and it works totally fine. I've even done that on the Pixel 5. It worked fine. And then I tried to do that with the Z Flip3 and the photos came out, but they were very pixelated or just like very sharp around the edges. And I share them to Instagram anyway, but it was just like, I don't like this. This is not how I want to share memories, so to speak.
So that's maybe that's what we get next year. Next year we get like either, I don't think they're going to add a telephoto that adds complexity and size and parts and cost. I think they're just going to add a 108 megapixel or 64 or 48 or 50. I know Samsung's got a new 50 megapixel sensor that we're probably going to see on the Pixel 6 Pro. So maybe we'll see that. And at least you'll be able to zoom 3 or 4x without too much loss.
Exactly.
Even in low light. And it'll be great.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that. But right now, that's, I think, the only two things that I would ding it for. And of course, as you said, there are some times when you kind of have to be ready to open it up quickly, right? And that doesn't always work very well. So
no. It's
yeah.
also kind of still bulky for like pockets
Yeah, 'cause
versus
it's
like a
thicker.
nice slab of glass. Exactly. It adds like this weird little density in it, which is fine. But I'm very curious to hear what your experience is going to be like with it, because I also want to know if you will have just as hard of a time opening it one-handed as I do.
Oh, I already did with the 100%. I will. I can tell you before I even start. I tried Michael's, as I said, and it's no different than the Flip 2 or the Flip 5G last year. Like I don't trust myself to open this with one hand.
It gets a little easier. Like I actually feel like the hinge in the display got a little softer. Maybe I broke it in a little bit, but it also could just be my feelings about it, because the case adds a bit of density to it, which kind of helps it actually open. Whoa, how are these things going to hold up over time? That is the question.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing is, with the case, you get protection, which is awesome, because if you try to open it one hand and you drop it, you're good.
Yeah.
But when I was opening mine, I didn't have the case. And it was always like, I'm not going to do this outside on the street. I'm going to do this in my house where it's wood and carpet. If it falls, it'll ding the wood or bounce on the carpet and nothing bad's going to happen.
Exactly.
But outside, I want no concrete rash. So I was literally always purposely opening it with two hands. And that becomes cumbersome. Like when you use the flip phone, remember those flip phones? You just clunk like that.
I used to flip them into my like jeans. And that's how I would like go around concerts, which looking back now, I should have gotten a little holster.
That's kind of awesome though. Oh my God.
The 2000s.
It's a different time.
So embarrassing.
So you also reviewed the Framework laptop, and I include that here because, we talk about laptops and tablets on the show. It's the Mobile Tech Podcast, but we don't generally focus on laptops, but me, I'm a nerd. I'm a big right to repair type person. I like the idea of, us trying to build products that are more recyclable, reusable. I know it's hard because it also conflicts with my early adopter nerdy, I want all the things now kind of feeling, but this framework caught my attention, and not enough to like try to get a review in it or anything, but here you are, you reviewed it. So what's your take? Is it something people should legitimately consider as a Windows laptop?
It's interesting. So I reviewed this several weeks ago now, I think before I left for vacation in July, and I haven't touched it since then because I just had to like do a bunch of stuff, is really the honest truth. But I thought about it the other day because A, I have to send it back, but also B, I bought a new laptop. So I ended up getting a Dell XPS 15. And this this is my brand new laptop. This is my new like workhorse. This is what I've been like waiting for. I was going to build a PC, but with all the chip shortages and everything, I really needed to just kind of make a quick move on a new computer. And so I got it in, and I was just thinking to myself, my old laptop, it lasted for so long. I had it for about 7 going on 8 years now. And it was like this mid-range Dell Inspiron with a Core i5, but I managed to Frankenstein it to just make it work for everything I needed. I put more RAM in it. I swapped out the hard drives. It used to have an optical drive bay.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. That's
I
old.
put an SSD in there. So I did all this stuff, and it worked. It's been doing my work until this last year. It just got really slow. And I was just thinking, God, this framework would have been really great to just be able to swap out the motherboard, put in the new components, and bam, that's it. Like I've got my computer. I didn't have to wait for this whole computer to be put together. The other thing is now I have a slight inkling. There might have been a manufacturing issue because this thing buzzes from the aux port.
Ooh.
It's completely anecdotal that I'm coming to this conclusion, but I do also feel like buying a laptop right now or any computer part during the shortage that's going on right now, it's a wait and see what we get sort of situation.
Yeah, I think that's true of all tech right now in a way. I mean, I haven't noticed any degradation in smartphones yet, but even cars, I'm hearing from people, since I review cars for Tech Radar, I'm hearing from people that there are some cars that are shipping with more defects than normal. Nothing that can't be fixed by your dealer. It's no big deal. I wouldn't stop buying a car because of it. But at the same time, compared to the before times, things are a little rough around the edges.
Exactly. And I do wonder if the framework would have helped us around that, but the everything about it is really well thought out. They thought about how to swap the different parts of the hardware. If you wanted to add a little customization, you could get like a new keyboard layout, which is really nice. Every single one of the modules is USB-C based. And I think, if I recall correctly from my meeting with them, you could technically use those in like an Android phone or anything that has USB-C. They're just these like
Right.
standalone little modules, which is so smart and great. But you kind of run into the issue of, oh, well, now I have to choose between my ports.
Yeah.
As it is, laptops don't, the ultra thin laptops don't come with a lot of ports. So you get what you get, but it can be a little limiting on that end. At least you could swap it. That's one upside. But the other sort of downside is the laptop just gets really hot. That's like the last thing that I really remembered about it, and that's stuck with me. And I ran multiple temperature tests. I have a kitchen infrared thermometer that I use for the laptops and the meat. So,
double purpose. Come on.
I just go to the kitchen and grab it. I'm like, I need this for a couple hours. And so I just sat here and I just like pointed the infrared at it as I was like running various benchmarks and just kind of letting it idling. And it kept coming in at around like 95 degrees over to as high as almost 110 degrees Fahrenheit at one point.
That's hot.
It's hot enough that you're like, ow, I don't want to touch that. And so when that happens, that's not good.
Is it metal or plastic, the chassis?
It's metal, but I imagine that because the motherboard is like completely removable as this one little part, that the airflow that they put in, maybe the fans aren't strong enough. There are all these I'm not quite sure, but at the same time, like the execution of it is almost like really good. It's almost really good. Everything else about it was perfect. It's just a fine laptop.
Cool. That's good to know. So just watch out for the heat and I guess the battery life too, right?
Yes. Now I remember, the battery life on that could have been better. But I got to tell you, after reviewing some Chromebooks after that, I noticed that they didn't last more than like 6 hours. So I have a feeling there's some regression happening in laptops. I think we're trying to figure out how to power those screens and all those peripherals without putting in the battery pack to handle it, just like on phones.
I think it's also the, cost thing. Chromebooks are so cheap, right? So a slightly smaller battery immediately makes it cheaper.
Oh, but on the Acer Chromebook Spin, which is like $800 for, and it was like the Core i5 version. And I just, it's been interesting. I kind of took over the laptop beat because a coworker left. And so, I use these things. So I'm just kind of taking over for a while. But it kind of reacquainted me with this world and sort of what's been going on. What's going to be really interesting is if after this chip shortage, the actual like Ryzen AMD architecture actually adds some real price competition, because I still ended up like buying an Intel laptop. The framework laptop is Intel. I think they do have, can't remember if they have a Ryzen. They do have a Linux option. That's very cheap. That's very affordable, I should say.
Nice.
So, something to consider.
I mean, you kind of expect that. That makes sense for a modular laptop, the kind of audience they're going after.
Precisely.
Right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So just, put an air conditioning unit right behind it. One of those small ones from Amazon that goes on your desk.
Oh, yeah. Those Jinsey ones that use a Peltier cooler, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what, I don't know. The nice thing is it's modular. You could take it apart and create, maybe rig up your own cooling solution somehow.
I know. Oh, wouldn't that be cool?
I wonder if you could swap the fan for a more powerful fan, like in terms of BTU, and then change the coolant paste, to a higher quality paste. And I'm wondering if that might help. And maybe that's a hack that's going to become pretty straightforward for this, since it is user serviceable after all, right?
Yep. Most
They're
of it
not going to get me mad at you if you try to do that. So
no, and they have all their PDFs, all the how-tos are available online. If anybody just wants to go like peep it at Framework Laptop, you can go kind of see. I can't remember if the fans I think they can be disconnected. I'm not sure if they can be removed. There's a couple of pieces that I understand are.
Yeah, somebody will figure it out. Trust me, it'll be fine.
It's a good concept to have floating in the ether.
I mean, I hacked a lot of netbooks back in my day. That's how I became a blogger, really.
Bless. I wrote about netbooks recently about how I missed them.
I used to swap parts that people said were impossible to swap. But Shenzhen is a magical place, and Alibaba gets you the coolest things if you're digging around.
100%.
So, yeah.
Wait. This is a slight digression, but I just need to ask you because I know you're a car person. Somebody I was watching on Instagram the other day, they bought an air blower for their car. Their German make and model vehicle, but they bought it like super not stock, like super third party. I always think about that. Like, is it safe? Because aren't those things made to, for different thermal temperatures at the price? Like, what if it like melts? And so I think about these things when I also look at components because I do want to save money. So.
I mean, I think that, as you know, the law says that if you own the vehicle, I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
You might void your warranty if you modify it too much. But I think most manufacturers are pretty okay with you if you swap parts that are similar. Like, I think that up to a certain point, like if you bring your car all melted back to the dealership because you did something stupid by changing a part you weren't supposed to, they're not going to cover the warranty, right?
Okay, but that's kind of funny.
But if you bring it back and you say like, my spare part is in perfect functioning condition, it didn't cause the fault, they can't refuse you service and they still have to honor the warranty. There were cases and laws around that, right? So I think, I don't know, I feel like there's some leeway there, and I think that that's kind of what framework allows you to do. Whereas I'm pretty sure that if you even just crack open your XPS 15 right now, you void the warranty.
Absolutely, I wouldn't even dream of it.
And my point is that cars are still in that gray area, and I think in many ways the car hacking culture, the car mod culture, is what is allowing iFixit and all the big wins we've had this year to happen in tech, because there's a precedent in this other thing that's becoming super techy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even on Teslas, right? People are trying to hack them and Tesla's pushing back, but they're winning because Tesla has to ultimately adhere to the existing standards of people want to mod their cars. So, it's like Apple, ideally they want to own your phone even when you paid for it, right? In an ideal world, if it was up to them, right? And Tesla is the same way, because they can remote control your car and disable it if they wanted to. They could break your car if they wanted to.
Yeah. Right? Anyway, sorry for the digression, but
it's totally fine. My take on the framework laptop is I want to see what happens 5 years from now. You bought this thing today, and will they continue being around as a business so that you can buy a new little USB-C dongle that now supports like USB 5 or whatever, right? Or that you'll be able to change the motherboard to the new like AMD Ryzen 9 million or whatever, or that you'll be able to like change the screen or something, right? Like that is the thing I want to see. Like the big question mark. And it was the same question mark for me with these modular phones, not modular, but the ones that are where you can swap the parts and the cameras. I can't remember their names now, but there's a couple of them out there. And I always felt like they were already pretty mid-rangey and pricey. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't think you're going to last 2 years with this thing. Like, even if you have the best intentions, because if you look at the pace of progress in mobile, like in phones in particular, it's moving so fast. I don't think they can keep up.
I know. Which is kind of a bummer.
I think with laptops, it's a much more manageable thing. I still have an old MacBook Air from 2011, and it works just fine. Like, it's not great, but it works.
I have that MacBook Air, and I gave it to my cousin, and she's doing college with it now. So.
Yeah, and you can. And, if you're just doing the web and basic stuff, it's totally fine. As long as you know which OS to kind of stop at, right? That's still a usable OS, but not completely overwhelming the machine. And Apple doesn't make it easy because they don't have old version of their OSs available on their servers anymore. So you have to, I've archived locally on one of my NASAs. I have an archive of every, not all of them, but all the milestone OSs, the ones that are pivotal, right? So that if I get somebody, like my friend just texted me today, say, hey, I got a MacBook 2011 for free, and I tried to run my stuff on it and nothing works. So then I tried to update it to the latest version of Mac OS and it wouldn't let me, and I'm stuck now. And I'm like, that's because there's an intermediate version that I have somewhere on my NAS that you could install, like High Sierra or Mojave, that will let you run the current Chrome and Firefox and all the things you want to run, but is no longer available through Apple servers. You know what I'm saying? And if you put that on there, you're golden for 2-3 more years because Apple continues supporting those users for 2 or 3 more years.
It's true.
So to me, this laptop, that's going to be the big question. Can framework be like that 2011 MacBook Air that seems to be A, indestructible, and B, still relevant in 2021 to some extent, right?
Or even my Dell Inspiron, which is not dead yet. It's just retired.
You should hang on to that. That's like, I've not heard of somebody doing a Dell for 7 years. That's a lot of years for a Dell.
Yeah.
Not because Dell makes bad laptops, just simply because the PC world is a little different than the Mac world that way.
Yeah. Well, I had a little help from my husband to kind of learn how to do all of these things, which I really appreciate. And I had to get a laptop to save on space. And I think I'm going to probably turn it into my little virtual machine playground.
Yeah, you should.
Because like you, I wish that I archived my old versions of Windows. At least you can kind of find them from the community. There's like some play around version that Microsoft let out some serials. They're like, here, use these serials if you want to do legacy stuff, but you can only do so much.
Yeah, the nice thing about Apple is that they always had standalone installers that contain the entire OS. And if you download them at the right time, you have them. And they're not signed such that they will not run. They're not like illegal in the sense that you're not sure where they came from, and they might be
like on Windows.
they might be some malware in them. Like, they're perfectly legit. And so if you hang on to them, like I have an old Cube, like the Mac Cube, that acrylic one, and that's a G4.
Bless.
And
yes.
I mean, it won't run anything higher than Snow Leopard, I think. Or even just Leopard. And you can't install any browser that runs today on Leopard. It can't, I mean, even back when you could still run a valid browser, it would not do 1080p video playback. Like it would choke on YouTube's at 1080p.
Yes.
So the point is, you never want to use this thing. But as a historical piece, having it on a version of an OS that still runs, that you could still potentially connect to the internet, is kind of cool.
It is very cool, yeah.
As an aside, I know we're going down the rabbit hole crazy here. You should check this out sometime. There is a community out there that's building Mozilla and Chromium builds, Firefox builds and Chromium builds custom for these old OSs and old computers, so that they run on the modern CSS and everything. So on some sites, it'll be too slow to really use because the sites have gotten so heavy. But for some stuff, it won't say I can't load this page because the browser doesn't support that feature. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of fun.
Thank you for telling me that, because I have this whole project I'm doing. I'm stroking my beard.
So for example, on this Leopard running Cube that I have a build of Firefox that is essentially the current build, but recompiled by this team for the G4. It's optimized with the G4 instruction set, so it actually hardware accelerated for the G4 chipset from back in the day. And it runs like, I can do things like Facebook, I can do things like, but YouTube it chokes because again, it couldn't play 1080p then, it still can't play 1080p. But if I do 720p, once the page is loaded, it's fine.
Once the page is loaded, like the good old days.
I have a fan in mind. My Cube was fanless originally, but I added a fan because I added a faster G4 in there, and it does kick on the fan. So yeah, the thing about the Cube is a whole aside here, but it did have a fan support on the motherboard because Apple knew that eventually, like they discontinued after a year, but they were planning to make it for a few years, and they knew that eventually it couldn't be fanless anymore, that they'd have to have a very slow fan at the bottom of the chimney. So there's actually a mounting bracket for a fan and a connector for a fan on the board, and the thermal management is in the firmware. So if you actually install a fan off the shelf, like a standard computer fan, like an 12 centimeter fan, you plug it in
from the bargain pile.
It'll fire up when it gets too hot in there, without you having to do anything. It's amazing.
That is awesome. We got a little bit of computer history going on here, so a little bit of everything.
This is why I have you on, Flo, because you and I nerd out about the weird things. That's great. A few more news items before we wrap up. Xiaomi is moving away from the Mi branding, apparently. Yeah. They now want their phones to be called Xiaomi 12 for next year's Xiaomi, since this year is the Mi 11. I don't feel good about this. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm a big Xiaomi fan. I have their Pocos and I have their Redmi phones and their Xiaomi Mi phones. But I felt the Mi brand was such a short, nice, sweet word. And it just rolled off the tongue so nicely. And I feel like
yeah, for a Western audience,
they've gotten big enough now that their brand is known enough that they can just drop the Mi and go for the full Xiaomi. I still don't think that's a very smart move.
And I don't think it's going to help them, at least not in the American market.
Well, definitely not.
Just because of America's continued Red Scare.
I mean, they sell a lot of appliances in the US. Like they have air purifiers and stuff, and they're all branded Mi. I don't see them rebranding them to Xiaomi. Who's going to?
I have a Mi box. Yeah, that I bought at Walmart.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
That I ended up putting into a box because it ended up not being good.
Whoops.
They got a bad software update that made everything made all the video ghost, like a ghosting effect.
Oops.
It was awful. So I just replaced it with a Chromecast with Google TV.
You know what's interesting about Xiaomi is a lot of these little appliance devices they sell, like the TV set-top boxes and the air purifier and stuff, are actually not made by Xiaomi. They're just branded by Xiaomi and made by these third parties.
That makes sense,
right?
because you'll see like 7 other names of the exact same looking product, at least like on AliExpress, where sometimes I'll buy some of the
100%.
Xiaomi stuff. But they have nice stuff too, though. Like it's like a curated.
Oh, yeah, but their phones and their tablets and even their laptops are really nice.
Well, even their little vacuum cleaners, and they have little battery powered screwdrivers. I think I have one of those, and I've got like a couple little lights here and there. They make cute stuff.
For sure. Overall, I've been impressed with their stuff, whether it be their phones or their, home automation, air purifiers, all that stuff they make.
Oh, and I got their bulbs, which is the Yi light.
Oh, the bulbs. Yeah, right. They make bulbs.
They're not even called Xiaomi.
I like their scooters. They make nice scooters, which are, by the way, the same
They
scooters.
made the best scooter for a while. Yep.
Yeah, Bird used their scooters for a while, I think. Anyway, the point is that Xiaomi, I don't know about this branding. I think that I get it, but I think it's a bad move. And, so the Mi Mix 4, which was announced as the Mi Mix 4, is actually now going to come out as just the Xiaomi Mix 4, which just sounds a bit weird. And Xiaomi 12 will be weirder than Mi 12 next year. And so I'm a little bummed, but at the same time, whatever. I think they feel like their brand is well known enough in the world now that they can kind of get away with this. And that's maybe possible. I mean, certainly outside the US, I can see that.
Yeah.
But Mi was so much better somehow.
Yeah, you could do so much with that as a marketing standpoint, right? Me, it's mine. I don't know.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Bah.
I don't know. I would love to just see a Xiaomi phone come to the US, but...
Oh, for sure. So you wrote about the Oppo magnetic charger, the wireless charger, and I don't know if you saw in my podcast topics, I said, I'm going to read this because it's funny. After Realme's MagDart comes Oppo's MagVook, which is, Realme is also a BBK brand. It's the more affordable. It's kind of like they're actually becoming the replacement for OnePlus in terms of affordability. Their phones are fantastic. If you get the hands on them, really nice. So Realme, like 2 or 3 weeks ago on the podcast, we talked about this. They announced MagDart, which is, compatible with MagVook because they use the same wired and wireless chargers between Oppo, OnePlus, and Realme. But Vivo has their own subsystem that is separate, even though they're part of BBK Group. Vivo is trying to be like the pestilent, bad child of the BBK Group.
I was gonna say the sibling that is just like, I'm over you guys. I don't belong in this family. I'm gonna go
100%.
Pay for my own way through school.
Yeah,
something.
That's right. So Realme's MagDart, the thing about it was that
what a name.
If I look at your article on MagVook, it's a mirror image of the technology.
Yeah.
It's magnetic, it's high speed, there's one puck that is really thin and there's one puck that has a fan built in. The fan one has the faster charging. I just laughed so hard when I read that. I was like, I just read this about Realme 2 weeks ago.
I kind of saw a similar thing on some of the overseas blogs just because I had to look there. It was kind of hard to find a lot of coverage about this in the US media, but I like the idea of it. I think it's very interesting how everything is positioned as like an Apple competition. And I think that's because for most people, that's who they know. That's the brand that they know. And that's the brand to really compete with globally. And so I can understand why it's being positioned as a MagSafe competitor. But I'm thinking about it as an Android user. And I'm like, I'm ready. Bring me my magnetic chargers. I would like some of these things, actually, because look, if batteries aren't going to get bigger or longer capacity or whatever it is, then at least maybe the stopgap measure between then and now. It's just have an easy way to charge these things.
I honestly think, like, I have to give tons of kudos to Apple for coming up with this idea of magnetically pairing a puck with the back of the phone for wireless charging, because you know how misaligned and easy it is to screw that up, right? On all of our Android, we've had wireless charging on Android and Windows Phone before that with Nokia, right? The old Nokia forever.
Oh, when you wake up the next morning and you realize that you didn't actually like place it right on the charger and nothing has charged overnight, and you're like, oh my God.
And pick up the phone and the puck stays with it, so you can use the phone while it's wirelessly charged. I think
that is genius. I didn't even think about that.
I think Apple made just a tiny little change that I think I'm telling you, Flo, 2 years from now, hopefully we have another podcast before that, but 2 years from now, we'll definitely have a podcast, you and I, and we're gonna have it's gonna be totally standard to have magnets on the back of phones for charging. Yeah, 100%. And it'll probably be fully standardized too, like the people who make the cheese standard will probably say, like, you need this many magnets in these positions for this to work.
Good point.
And they'll probably standardize the wattage at this point too, because right now everybody's got their fast charger for wired. Everybody's got their fast charger for wireless right now, right? So that's got to change. That's got to get standardized somehow. I mean, it's starting to improve with PD now. We get like up to 100 watt for PD. And I've noticed that a lot of phones that use custom chargers, like a lot of phones that use custom chargers now also will charge on PD. Maybe not up to the 65 watt or whatever that their custom charger does, but at least to like 40 or 30, which is pretty impressive because we all have PD chargers out the kazoo, don't we? Like, sure, for my OnePlus, I do have a, warp charger somewhere because it's, I've got so many OnePlus devices. Yeah. But other than that, and by the way, the brick for the OnePlus 9 series, I think this started with the AT.
Yes.
The 65 watt brick is a PD brick up to 45 watt as well. So I love that. I love that, the phones can do PD up to a certain point and the chargers can do PD up to a certain point. And then you marry the charger and the phone and all of a sudden you get the best of both worlds. That's cool. That's really cool.
I will say I do love my little routine at night where I put my phone on the OnePlus charger and then I put in my little buds and then I put my Pocket Casts on, turn off when done, and then it's like a whole routine. But I do sometimes get what is that noise? Oh, that's the fan in the OnePlus charger.
Yeah, right?
It's as loud as a MacBook, I swear to God.
It's pretty loud, for sure. Yeah.
It's like, what is that? Is that? Oh, no, it's this phone fan. Okay. That's fine.
Speaking of Oppo, they just had like a virtual event for a lot of the Asian journalists. And Richard Lai of Engadget, who's based in Hong Kong, wrote about it for Engadget. Basically, they're coming up with some new technologies for imaging, for camera systems on phones. Ooh. And nothing of here is super new in the sense that we've seen similar announcements from other companies, but it's a nicely packaged, altogether kind of juicy and delicious kind of thing. Because if you're like me, a big fan of cameras on phones, 5-axis optical image stabilization is coming from Oppo, and that means that it's not just the lens that's stabilized, but the sensor and the lens. So it's like in-body stabilization plus lens stabilization. Basically, combine what we have in the iPhone 12 Pro Max with what we have in the Galaxy S21. It's crazy stuff. And then they have so do you remember back when the Asus Zenfone Zoom came out?
Oh.
2012 to 13, I want to say. And it had, a periscope lens, but it was variable zoom.
Yes,
so,
I remember that.
Okay, so then we went from that to fixed periscopes. Like now we have 5Xs and 10Xs that are not movable. And then Sony just came out with the Xperia 1 Mark III recently with a periscope that had 2 positions. Like you don't have an in-between, but you can go from 3X to 5X or whatever, right? Like it just switches between two spots. And so it seems that we're back to square one where basically the Asus Zenfone Zoom was now, because basically Oppo showed a new super compact, super, small variable zoom periscope. And this is completely variable. And I think, the difference between now and 2012 is this takes about a third of the space. And it's probably way more shockproof than it was, right? Because that's the thing, right? And also, back then, the problem with the Zenfone Zoom was that the f-stop was really bad because it was a zoom lens. So it didn't gather light very well. And with the sensors we had back there, we were kind of SOL. So it didn't really perform super well. It was kind of a technical tour de force, but it wasn't really delivering. I think with these, the f-stops are really much better. Everything's more compact. And it has built-in stabilization using prisms and stuff. So I think we're going to see some better performance without having, like, the S21 Ultra right now has a 3X and a 10X that are separate, like, cameras. We're going to see a single sensor with this variable zoom periscope on top of it. It's going to make our phones more compact and still just as good, and maybe a little more likely to break, I guess, because there's more moving parts. But at the same time, I think we can make this solid. Like, all those phones with pop-up cameras that are electric, they're still doing fine 2-3 years later.
My husband misses that OnePlus. He really misses that pop-up one.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was a fun gimmick. And at the same time, it did keep it safe, I guess, when we went to the beach, as long as you didn't use the pop-up mechanism, and then that would introduce dust and specks into it.
Oh, yeah. At the beach, I can only imagine what nightmare that would be.
I know. Oh, yeah, by the way, Flip 3... I wouldn't recommend taking it to the beach. I wouldn't recommend doing that. At least not without a plastic bag that's like rightly sealed.
Yeah, because it's not dust resistant in any way. It's X on the dust part. And what is it? 7 or 8 on the waterproof? Is IPX7, IPX8?
I think it's 6.
IPX6.
Or 8.
Okay, well,
I don't remember.
Splashing and brief immersion. So... you'll be fine if you drop it in the toilet and you pick it up right away.
Exactly.
But don't leave it in the bathtub.
No, don't. Don't. You could read in the bathtub too with like wet hands. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah, because, as long as you don't let it fall in there and leave it in there, you're fine.
Exactly.
The S21, however, and the iPhone and the OnePlus and the Pixel, you can leave those in the tub in 1 foot of water for 30 minutes and be fine.
Yeah.
Who would do that, though? Unless you drop it in the stream and you don't realize and you go back to get it. I don't know.
That's exactly the whole point of it. It would just be an accidentally, oh my God, I dropped it. I shouldn't have dropped it. But I don't go to the beach. Like when I used to go stand-up paddleboarding before I had a kid. And I would never... I mean, I took the phone out in a waterproof case, even though it was a so-called waterproof phone. I always had one of those lanyards around me. Because, if you're going out by yourself, you need to have service on you, because God forbid, who knows what's going to happen. Oh boy, all these ways that we end up using phones and things like that.
I mean, I'm kind of glad most phones are water resistant nowadays because, humans are just not the most careful. And it's just a nice safety net.
We can't be carrying around precious. We're already doing so much right now that's precious. Like, let me worry about the mask thing. Let me worry about that stuff. Don't let me worry about my phone.
Indeed. Well, Flo, we got to wrap it up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet and all that good jazz?
Absolutely. So I write for Gizmodo. It's gizmodo.com. I have a little vanity URL, flowrights.tech. And if you type that in, it'll take you to my author page at Gizmodo. That's so awesome. I pay Hover for that. They used to be a sponsor for the Twit Network. So I was like, that's nice. That's a good idea. And then also I have a website, florenceion.com, if you want to find other places to find me. I have a Discord. I have social media of all types. So that's where you can find me. Yes, you should read Flo on Gizmodo. It's good stuff. Thank you, Miriam. I appreciate it. You still do shows on Twit from time to time? Yes. And so I'm still doing All About Android, and I am still doing material every week on Relay FM Network. Wow. So you are very busy. Wow. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so folks, if you want more podcasts in addition to this one, Flo makes 2 of them on a regular basis. So just go and listen to them. And folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL without the vowels. So it's like the comic book character Tankgirl, but drop the vowels. And that's on Twitter and on Instagram. So Twitter is where you want to hit the 2 of us up for any thoughts on this podcast, questions, whatever you might have. Precisely. Instagram is where you want to go for pretty pictures of phones and pretty pictures taken with phones, because that's pretty much all I do there. Maybe some cars now that I'm reviewing cars, but
check it out. There's a couple of YouTube channels that go along with the show, youtube.com/mobile tech podcast. That is basically all the unboxing, like directly phone related, maybe earbud related, like the core technology that's mobile is in there. It's, again, visual complement to the podcast. And then we have, obviously, another one, which is more like, the stuff we talked about Xiaomi earlier, like home automation, travel tech, the battery packs, the air purifiers. That's youtube.com/mobile tech more, where my producer and I are trying to kind of like work this one out. We're kind of having a hard time because we're so busy with the main show that adding another YouTube channel might have been premature. But please subscribe, because we will eventually ramp it up in some way or another. So yeah, I'd appreciate that. The podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. That's the URL. There's a RSS feed there if you're old school, but we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, everywhere good podcasts can be found. If your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. It helps with discovery. And then I have a Patreon now. Woohoo! So that's been 2-3 months now. I got a bunch of patrons. Thanks to all of you folks for being helpful and on the show. If you're wondering what the deal is, basically I've got a Discord like you do, and that's you can access that through one of the tiers. But I think the most exciting tier is the video tier. If you want to see Flo and I right now on video, unedited before the actual audio podcast comes out a couple of days later, go to patreon.com/TNKGRL. That's patreon.com/tankgirl, and pick that, I call it the 10 megabits tier. I have them by megabits. So
nice.
Like 3 megabits, 5 megabits, 10 megabits, and there's more. The 10 megabits tier gives you the video every week in advance, unedited, so check that out. I don't have anyone to thank this week, but if you join, I will be able to thank you next week, so consider that, folks. And if you don't want to use Patreon, there is a link in the show notes for a PayPal donation. If you can help that way and you prefer that way, consider that. That'd be great. Finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Audible, audible.com. They've been with us forever, and they're fantastic. We have a special deal, 30-day free trial. You get to keep a free book at the end. Hopefully, you stick around after that. But if you don't, you still get a good deal. And honestly, I don't think you're going to be able to not join after you use it for a bit, because it's just fantastic. I just love it for road trips. If you're a delivery driver and you're driving all day and you want to listen to books, that's perfect. I love books and I love to read, but I just don't have time to read a lot. Sometimes I'm just tired. My eyes are tired as I get older. And Audible just delivers that same experience, that kind of epic, hours-long things that you break down to smaller pieces. Plus, they have shorter content and podcasts and a bunch of other stuff. So audibletrial.com/mobiletech is the URL. Try it out, audibletrial.com/mobiletech. Hopefully you stick around, and no matter what you do, you help out the podcast. So thanks for doing that, and thank you to Audible for being our longtime sponsor. Of course, I also want to thank you, Flo, for being on the show yet again. Thanks.
Thank you, Miriam, for having me and for working with my weird schedule.
Don't worry.
It's having a kid. It's honestly.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time.
No, it's a big responsibility, and I do appreciate you making the time to be on the show. Don't worry. We will have you on the show again at some point in the future. And folks, we will have a show next week, another one. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.